Sometimes the worst day of your life becomes the first page of your greatest story. This is about a woman who lost everything on the coldest night of the year, and about a man who'd been lost long before they ever met. What happened next? Well, let me tell you, nobody saw it coming. Not even them. Some stories are forgotten. Others stay with you forever. Subscribe now. And never miss the ones that matter. Her name was Sarah Mitchell, 42 years old. 20 years at Henderson and Associates, the biggest marketing firm in Boston. 20 years of missed birthdays, canceled vacations, relationships that withered because work always came first. And on Christmas Eve, at 4:47 in the afternoon, they called her into the glass office on the 32nd floor. 3 minutes later, she walked out carrying a cardboard box and her dignity in pieces. Budget cuts, they said. Nothing personal, they said. 20 years gone in 3 minutes. Sarah stood on the sidewalk outside that building, watching everyone else rush home to their families. The city sparkled with Christmas lights. Couples held hands. Children pressed their faces against bakery windows. And she stood there thinking, what now? She had no family left. Her mother passed 3 years ago. Her father, 5 years before that. Her sister moved to Seattle, and they barely spoke anymore. Her apartment was empty. Her savings account was, let's just say it wasn't good. She'd given everything to a company that erased her like a typo. Narrator. She walked. Didn't know where she was going. Just walked. Through the commons. Past the ice skating rink where children squealed with joy. Past the carolers singing about peace on earth. And then she found herself standing in front of a small bookstore she'd walked past 1,000 times, but never entered. The sign above the door read, Second Chapters. She didn't believe in signs, but her feet carried her inside anyway. The bookstore smelled like old paper and coffee and something else, cinnamon maybe, or hope. If hope had a smell, it was warm, quiet. String lights hung along the shelves like captured stars. And behind the counter stood a man, late 40s. Salt and pepper hair that looked like he cut it himself. Thick sweater with a hole near the collar. Reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked up when the bell chimed. Their eyes met. And for just a second, one tiny second, Sarah forgot why she was crying. We're about to close, he said. His voice was quiet, careful, like someone who'd learned to be gentle with broken things. I'm sorry, Sarah whispered. I'll go. She turned to leave. Wait. She stopped. You look like you could use a few more minutes, he said. Take your time. I'm not in a rush. That kindness? That simple, unexpected kindness from a stranger? It cracked something open inside her. And Sarah Mitchell, who hadn't cried in front of anyone in 10 years, who prided herself on being strong and professional and fine, stood in that bookstore and wept. Not loud. Not dramatic, just quiet tears that fell like surrender. The man didn't rush over, didn't ask what was wrong, didn't try to fix it. He just said, there's coffee in the back. Help yourself. No charge. His name was Daniel Harper, though Sarah wouldn't learn that for another hour. And here's what you need to know about Daniel. 5 years ago, he lost his wife to cancer. 38 years old. Gone in 11 months. They'd planned to travel the world, build a life, grow old together. Instead, Daniel held her hand while she took her last breath, and then he spent the next 5 years trying to remember how to be human again. This bookstore? It was her dream. She'd filled notebooks with plans, what sections they'd have, what the sign would say, how it would smell. After she died, Daniel sold everything they owned and made her dream real. Every book on every shelf was a love letter to a woman who'd never walked through that door. But here's the thing about grief. It teaches you to recognize it in others. And Daniel knew that look in Sarah's eyes. The look that said, I don't know how to keep going. Sarah sat in the back corner of the bookstore, holding a cup of coffee she didn't drink, staring at books she couldn't read. Daniel kept working, organizing shelves, checking inventory. But every few minutes, he'd glance over, making sure she was okay. Not in a creepy way, in a human way. Finally, around 6 o'clock, she spoke. "Why are you being nice to me?" Daniel looked up, pushed his glasses higher on his nose. "Because someone was nice to me once," he said, "when I needed it most. And I never forgot it." They talked until the street lights flickered on. Not about the big things. Not at first. They talked about books. About how Sarah used to read as a kid, but stopped somewhere along the way. About how Daniel believed every person had a book that could change their life. They just had to find it. "What's yours?" Sarah asked. Daniel smiled. Sad but real. "The Velveteen Rabbit," he said. Sarah almost laughed. "The children's book?" "The children's book," Daniel confirmed. "It's about becoming real. About how love, even when it hurts, even when it costs you everything, makes you real." Sarah didn't laugh, because sitting in that bookstore, talking to this stranger who looked at her like she mattered, she felt real for the first time in years. "I got fired today," she said suddenly. 20 years. And they just erased me." Daniel nodded slowly. "I'm sorry. I don't have anywhere to go. I mean, I have an apartment, but it's empty. And I'll be alone on Christmas. And Her voice cracked. Daniel set down the book he was holding. "You're not alone right now," he said quietly. That was the moment. Not fireworks. Not a kiss. Not even a touch. Just 6 words that landed like a lifeline. "You're not alone right now. Have you ever met someone who changed everything without even trying? Comment below. I want to hear your story." At 7 o'clock, Daniel locked the front door. "I need to close up," he said. "But..." He hesitated. "But I don't have anywhere to be. And you said you don't either. So..." "There's a diner 2 blocks from here. Open all night. Terrible coffee but great pie. If you want company, I'm offering." Sarah knew this was a choice. She could go home, curl up on her couch, let this terrible day swallow her whole. Or she could say yes to a stranger with sad eyes and a kind heart. "Okay," she whispered. Daniel smiled, and it was like watching the sun rise after the longest night. The diner was called Murphy's. Red vinyl booths, checkered floor, a jukebox in the corner playing songs from 40 years ago. They sat across from each other, ordered pie, didn't touch it at first, just talked. "Tell me something true," Daniel said. "What?" "Something true. About you. Not your resume. Not your accomplishments. Something true." Sarah stared at this man she'd known for 3 hours. And she told him the truth. "I'm scared," she said. "I'm 42 years old and I have no idea who I am without my job. I don't have hobbies. I don't have friends, not real ones. I worked 80-hour weeks for 2 decades and I have nothing to show for it. I'm scared that I wasted my life." Daniel didn't tell her she was wrong, didn't give her a pep talk. He just said, "Me too." Sarah looked up, surprised. "I'm scared every day," Daniel continued. "Scared that I'm not honoring her memory right. Scared that I'll forget what her laugh sounded like. Scared that I'm just going through the motions." "Is that why you kept the bookstore open tonight?" Sarah asked. "Because you didn't want to go home?" Daniel met her eyes. "Yes." The truth sat between them like a third presence. 2 broken people. Both terrified. Both lost. Both desperate for a reason to keep going. "Can I tell you something?" Sarah said. "Anything." "When I walked into your store tonight, I was thinking about giving up. Not in a dramatic way. Just not trying anymore. Does that make sense?" "Yes." "But then you were kind to me, and we talked. And for the first time in years, I felt like maybe." "Maybe what?" Sarah's voice broke. "Maybe I matter." Daniel reached across the table, slowly, giving her time to pull away. And he took her hand. "You matter," he said, firm, certain. "You matter, Sarah." She told him her name somewhere between the bookstore and the diner. And hearing him say it, really say it like it meant something, she broke. But this time, She wasn't alone. They stayed at that diner until midnight. Talked about everything. Their childhoods. Their regrets. The dreams they'd abandoned. The people they'd lost. And somewhere around 11:30, Daniel said something that changed everything. The bookstore needs help. Sarah blinked. What? I've been trying to run it alone for 5 years. It's too much. I need someone who understands stories. Someone who cares about people. I can't pay much. Not yet. But it's something. And you'd be helping me keep her dream alive. Sarah stared at him. This man she'd met 6 hours ago was offering her a job. A purpose. A reason. Why? She whispered. You don't even know me. Daniel smiled. That sad, beautiful smile. I know enough, he said. I know you're kind. I know you're hurting. I know you need this as much as I do. Say yes. And here's where the story could have ended happily. Here's where Sarah could have said yes, started working at the bookstore, and slowly rebuilt her life. But life isn't that simple. Pause, tension building, because at 12:03 a.m., Sarah's phone rang. Unknown number. Sarah almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello. A man's voice. Professional. Cold. Is this Sarah Mitchell? Yes. This is Detective Morrison with the Boston Police Department. We need you to come to the station immediately. Sarah's blood went cold. Why? What's wrong? It's about your former employer, Henderson and Associates. There's been an incident. What kind of incident? The building's been broken into. Your security access card was used to enter the premises at 11:47 p.m. tonight. We need to ask you some questions. Sarah felt the room tilt. That's impossible, she said. I've been here. I've been at this diner for hours. Can anyone verify that? She looked at Daniel. This man she'd met today. This stranger. Yes, she said. Yes, someone can verify it. We'll need them to come with you. Sarah hung up. Her hands were shaking. What's wrong? Daniel asked. Someone broke into my old company, using my security card. The police think it was me. Daniel's expression shifted, from concerned to determined. Then we go to the police station, he said. Right now. And I tell them you've been with me all night. Daniel, you don't have to. Yes, I do. And that's when Sarah realized something. This man, this beautiful, broken man, was willing to stand beside her. A woman he'd known for 6 hours. Because that's what good people do. They show up. The police station smelled like bad coffee and desperation. Sarah sat in an interrogation room, not arrested, but not free either, while Daniel waited outside. Detective Morrison was 50-something. Tired eyes. Looked like he'd worked too many Christmas Eves. Walk me through your day, he said. So Sarah did. Getting fired at 4:47 p.m. Walking through the city. Finding the bookstore. Meeting Daniel. The diner. And this Daniel person. How long have you known him? Since tonight. Morrison raised an eyebrow. You expect me to believe you spent Christmas Eve with a complete stranger? Yes, Sarah said quietly. Because sometimes strangers are kinder than people you've known your whole life. Morrison studied her. Looked at his notes. Your security card was definitely used tonight. Someone accessed the financial records department. Copied files. It wasn't me. Who else would have your card? Sarah thought back. When they fired me, they asked for my badge. I gave it to them. But what? They kept everything. My badge. My laptop. My files. Anyone in that office could have used my card. Morrison leaned back in his chair. You got fired on Christmas Eve. 20 years of service. That's a pretty good motive for revenge. I didn't. I believe you, Morrison interrupted. Sarah stared at him. You do. We pulled security footage from the building. The person who broke in was male. About 6 feet tall. Wore a mask, but definitely not you. Then why am I here? Morrison sighed. Because someone is framing you, and we need to figure out who. They let Sarah go at 2 in the morning. Daniel was still waiting. He stood up the moment she walked out. Searched her face. "You okay?" Sarah nodded. Too overwhelmed to speak. "Let's get you home," he said gently. Daniel drove her to her apartment. An old building in Cambridge. 3 flights up. At her door, she turned to him. "Thank you," she said. "For everything. For tonight. For the bookstore. For the police station. For Sarah." She stopped. Daniel looked at her with those sad, kind eyes. "You don't have to thank me for being decent. Most people wouldn't have stayed. I'm not most people." They stood in that hallway, 2 broken people who'd found each other on the worst night of the year. "The job offer still stands," Daniel said softly. "Whenever you're ready." "Why are you doing this?" Sarah asked. "Really?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "Because 5 years ago, when my wife died, I wanted to disappear. And a stranger, someone I'd never met, told me that the world needed my light, even if I couldn't see it." "You have light, Sarah. Don't let them take it." Sarah felt tears coming again. "I start Monday," she whispered. Daniel smiled. "Real and warm and alive. Monday it is." Christmas Day came and went. Sarah spent it alone in her apartment, but it felt different now. Less like loneliness, more like preparation. She called her sister in Seattle. They talked for 2 hours. Cried. Laughed. Made plans to visit. She donated half her business clothes to charity. Kept the comfortable things. And on Monday morning, at 9 a.m. sharp, she walked into Second Chapter's bookstore. Daniel was already there, making coffee, organizing the new releases. He looked up when she entered. "Ready?" he asked. Sarah smiled. "Ready." The first week was hard. Sarah had to learn the inventory system, how to talk to customers, how to recommend books she'd never read. But Daniel was patient, kind, encouraging. "You're a natural," he said on Friday afternoon. "I alphabetized the mystery section wrong," Sarah pointed out. "Yeah, but you made 3 people smile today. That's what matters." And slowly, so slowly, she almost didn't notice, Sarah started to heal. She woke up with purpose, looked forward to going to work, actually laughed during the day. Daniel healed too. He talked about his wife more, shared memories without crying, smiled more easily. They had lunch together every day, traded book recommendations, told stories. And somewhere in there, between the pages and the coffee and the quiet moments, they became friends. Real friends. But here's the thing about healing. It makes you strong enough to face the truth. 2 weeks after Sarah started at the bookstore, Detective Morrison called. "We found who broke into Henderson and Associates," he said. "Who?" "Your former boss, Richard Henderson." "What?" "He'd been embezzling from the company for 3 years. Millions of dollars. When the board started asking questions, he panicked. Broke in on Christmas Eve to erase the evidence. And he tried to frame me." "Exactly. Used your security card. Made it look like you were the one stealing. But he screwed up, left digital fingerprints everywhere." Sarah sat down hard. The man who fired her, who destroyed her life, had been a thief all along. And he'd tried to make her the villain. "What happens now?" she asked. "He's been arrested. You'll need to testify eventually." "But Sarah?" "Yeah, you're completely cleared. And the company? They're going under. Turns out Henderson destroyed everything." Sarah hung up the phone. Daniel looked over from where he was shelving books. "Everything okay?" She told him everything. When she finished, Daniel was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Do you feel vindicated?" Sarah thought about it. "No," she said slowly. "I feel free." Free? That company almost destroyed me. But it didn't. I'm here. I'm alive. I'm starting over. And I'm happy. Daniel smiled. And this time, it reached his eyes. Winter turned to spring. Sarah became essential to the bookstore. She reorganized the children's section. Started a book club for lonely seniors. Brought in new customers every week. Second Chapters wasn't just surviving anymore. It was thriving. And so was Sarah. She laughed easily now, wore comfortable clothes, let her hair down literally and metaphorically. She looked light. But here's what she didn't realize. Daniel was falling in love with her. Not the dramatic, sweep you off your feet kind. The quiet kind. The dangerous kind. The kind that sneaks up on you while you're shelving books together. While you're sharing coffee in the morning. While you're watching someone bloom back to life. He loved the way she hummed while she worked. The way she remembered customer names. The way she cried at the endings of books. He loved her. And it terrified him. Because loving someone meant risking everything again. And Daniel didn't know if he could survive another loss. Every story here carries a lesson, a warning, or a miracle. Subscribe, your next breakthrough might be one story away. It was a Tuesday in April. Slow day. Just Sarah and Daniel in the store. They were sitting in the back, eating sandwiches, when Sarah said something that changed everything. I'm happy. Daniel looked up. Good. You deserve to be. No, I mean, she struggled for words. I haven't been happy in years. Maybe decades. But here, with you, in this place. I'm happy. Narrator. Daniel set down his sandwich. Sarah. I know what you're going to say. That it's just the new job. The fresh start. That it won't last. That's not what I was going to say. Then what? Daniel looked at her. Really looked at her. And he decided to be brave. I was going to say that you make me happy too. Sarah's breath caught. I was going to say, Daniel continued, his voice shaking slightly, that I wake up every morning excited to see you. That I make excuses to stay late just so we can talk longer. That you what? That I didn't think I'd ever feel this way again. Sarah stared at him. This man who'd saved her life without even knowing it. This beautiful, broken man who'd given her purpose and joy and hope. Daniel, she whispered. I know it's complicated, he said quickly. I know I'm still grieving. I know you're just getting back on your feet. I know. Daniel. He stopped. I feel it too. The air between them shifted. Became charged. Electric. They sat 3 feet apart, but it felt like 3 inches. What do we do? Sarah asked. Daniel shook his head slowly. I don't know. Because here's the truth. They were both still healing. Both still scared. Both terrified of ruining the one good thing they'd found. So they did nothing. Just sat there, 3 feet apart, feeling everything and saying nothing. And sometimes, that's the bravest thing you can do. Have you ever had feelings for someone but been too scared to act on them? Let me know in the comments, because what happens next, you won't believe. After that conversation, things got weird. Not bad. Just awkward. They still worked together. Still had lunch. Still recommended books to each other. But there was a carefulness now. They didn't sit as close. Didn't let their hands brush when passing books. Didn't linger in conversations. It was like they'd both stepped back from a cliff, and now they were terrified of getting too close to the edge again. A week passed. Then 2. Sarah threw herself into work. Organized the entire stockroom. Created a new display for local authors. Started a poetry night. Daniel did the same. Worked longer hours. Took on more inventory. Barely made eye contact. They were drowning themselves in busyness. Because being busy meant not having to feel. But here's the thing about feelings. They don't go away just because you ignore them. They get stronger. It was a Thursday night in May. The store was closed. Sarah was finishing up the register. Daniel was in the back, packing boxes. The silence between them was suffocating. Finally, Sarah couldn't take it anymore. She walked to the back room. Daniel looked up, surprised. We need to talk, Sarah said. Sarah. No. We need to talk about what's happening. Because this. She gestured between them. This is killing me. Daniel set down the box he was holding. What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me the truth. Why did you pull away? Because I'm scared, Daniel said finally. Of what? Of losing you. You can't lose something you never had, Sarah said quietly. That's not true. Daniel's voice cracked. I already have you. As a friend. As a partner here. As what? As someone I can't imagine my life without. Sarah felt tears building. Then why are you pushing me away? Because everyone I love leaves, Daniel shouted. The words echoed in the small room. Daniel sank down onto a stack of boxes, his head in his hands. My wife. My parents. Everyone. They all leave. And I can't. I can't go through that again. Sarah walked over slowly, knelt down in front of him, took his hands in hers. Look at me, she said softly. Daniel raised his head. His eyes were red. I'm not going anywhere, Sarah said. Do you hear me? I'm not leaving. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because you saved my life, Daniel. You gave me a reason to keep going. And I'm not walking away from that. I'm not walking away from you. But I'm scared too, Sarah continued. I'm scared of getting hurt. Scared of losing myself again. Scared of loving someone so much that I forget who I am. So what do we do? Daniel whispered. Sarah smiled through her tears. We be scared together. They stayed there on the floor of that stockroom for a long time, just holding hands, just breathing. And then, slowly, so slowly, it felt like the world was holding its breath. Daniel leaned forward. Sarah met him halfway. Their first kiss was soft, gentle, like two people who'd been broken before and knew how delicate hope could be. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't passion. It was promise. A promise that said, I see your scars and I'm not afraid. A promise that said, let's try. When they pulled apart, Sarah was crying. So was Daniel. Okay, he whispered. Okay. Sarah asked. Okay. Let's be scared together. And that was the moment. Not when they confessed their feelings. Not when they kissed. But when they chose each other. Despite the fear. Despite the risk. Despite everything. Summer came to Boston like a gift. Sarah and Daniel didn't rush into anything. They took it slow. Dinner dates after work. Movies on Sunday afternoons. Long walks through the city. They talked about everything, their pasts, their dreams, their fears. They learned each other like books. Every page. Every chapter. Sarah met Daniel's friends, the people who'd kept him alive after his wife died. Daniel met Sarah's sister when she visited from Seattle. They blended their lives carefully. Intentionally. They were building something real. And the bookstore? It flourished. Became a community hub. A place where lonely people found connection. Where readers found new worlds. Sarah started hosting writing workshops. Daniel began a program where customers could donate books to shelters. Second chapters became what it was always meant to be. A place where stories and people got second chances. But life isn't a fairy tale. And sometimes, just when you think you've found happiness, the past comes knocking. It was late August. Sarah and Daniel were closing the store when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. But something, that same instinct from Christmas Eve, made her pick up. Hello? Sarah Mitchell? A woman's voice. Older. Shaking. Yes. This is Margaret Henderson. Richard Henderson's wife. Sarah's blood went cold. Richard Henderson. The man who'd fired her. Who'd tried to frame her. Who was now sitting in a federal prison. What do you want? Sarah asked carefully. I need to talk to you. In person. Please. It's important. I don't think that's a good idea. He's dying. Sarah felt the room tilt. What? Cancer. Stage 4. They're saying weeks, maybe days. And Margaret's voice broke. He's asking for you. Why would he ask for me? Because he needs to make things right. Before it's too late. Sarah looked at Daniel. He was watching her with concern. I'll think about it, she said finally. She hung up. What was that? Daniel asked. Sarah told him. Are you going to go? He asked. I don't know. Should I? Daniel took her hand. Only you can answer that. 2 days later, Sarah walked into Massachusetts General Hospital. Daniel offered to come with her. She said no. This was something she needed to do alone. Room 437. Richard Henderson lay in the bed, a shadow of the powerful man she'd known. Tubes and wires everywhere. Skin gray. Eyes hollow. He looked up when she entered. Sarah, he rasped. She didn't sit down. Just stood by the door. You have 5 minutes, she said. Richard tried to laugh. It came out as a cough. Always direct. I respected that about you. You fired me on Christmas Eve. I know. You tried to frame me for your crimes. I know. So why am I here? Richard closed his eyes. Because I need to say I'm sorry. And because you deserve to know the truth. What truth? Richard opened his eyes. They were filled with tears. I didn't fire you because of budget cuts. I fired you because you were getting too close to discovering what I'd done. You asked questions about the quarterly reports. You noticed discrepancies in the client accounts. You were about to expose me, so I got rid of you first. Sarah felt rage burning in her chest. You destroyed my life to cover your crimes. Yes. 20 years. Gone. Because you were a coward and a thief. Yes. And you think saying sorry makes it better? Richard shook his head slowly. No. Nothing makes it better. But I needed you to know, it wasn't your fault. You didn't fail. You were good at your job. Too good. I took everything from you. And I'm sorry. That's all I can say. I'm sorry. Sarah stood there, looking at this dying man who'd almost destroyed her. And she felt nothing. No rage. No satisfaction. No vindication. Just emptiness where the anger used to be. I forgive you, she said quietly. Richard's eyes widened. What? I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I'm done carrying this. You took my job, my security, my identity, but you know what you didn't take? My ability to start over. My ability to find joy again. My ability to choose who I want to be. Sarah walked to the door. Stopped. Losing that job was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it led me to a life I actually want to live. So thank you, Richard, for setting me free. She walked out of that hospital room, and she never looked back. September turned to October. Sarah told Daniel everything about the hospital visit. How she'd forgiven Richard. How she'd meant it. I'm proud of you, Daniel said. For what? For being bigger than your pain. The leaves turned gold and red. The bookstore hosted a Halloween story night for kids. Sarah dressed as a witch. Daniel dressed as a vampire. They were ridiculous and happy and alive. And late that night, after the last customer left, Daniel did something unexpected. He took Sarah's hand. Come with me. Where? You'll see. He led her to the back of the store, to a small door she'd never noticed before. What's this? Sarah asked. The roof. Daniel opened the door, revealing narrow stairs. They climbed up, and emerged onto the rooftop of the bookstore. The city spread out before them like a carpet of lights. The Charles River glittered in the moonlight. The air was crisp and cool and perfect. Daniel had set up blankets, candles in jars, thermoses of hot chocolate. When did you? Sarah started. I've been planning this for weeks, Daniel admitted. They sat down on the blankets, drank hot chocolate, looked at the stars, and after a long, comfortable silence, Daniel spoke. Do you remember Christmas Eve? How could I forget? You walked into my store, and I was just going through the motions, day after day, existing but not living. And then there you were, this brilliant, broken woman who'd lost everything. And somehow, by helping you, you helped me. Sarah felt tears building. You gave me my life back, she said. No, Daniel said gently. You gave yourself your life back. I just held the door open. He turned to face her fully. Sarah, I know it's only been 10 months. I know we're both still healing. I know we agreed to take things slow. But I also know that I love you. Completely. Terrifyingly. Irrevocably. Daniel reached into his pocket, pulled out a small box. Sarah's breath caught. This was my wife's ring, Daniel said, opening the box. She made me promise that if I ever found love again, I'd give it to that person. Because she believed love shouldn't end. It should multiply. Sarah Mitchell, will you marry me? Sarah looked at the ring. Simple gold band. Small diamond. Beautiful. She looked at Daniel. This man who'd saved her. Who'd loved her. Who'd chosen her every single day. And she thought about the woman she used to be. The one who worked 80-hour weeks and had no life. The one who got fired on Christmas Eve and thought her world was ending. That woman was gone, and in her place was someone new. Someone happy. Someone loved. Yes, Sarah whispered. Yes. Daniel asked, like he couldn't believe it. Sarah laughed through her tears. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Daniel slipped the ring on her finger, and they kissed under the stars, under the city lights, under the endless possibility of their future. And for the first time in either of their lives, everything felt right. They got married on a Saturday in December, almost exactly 1 year after that first Christmas Eve. Not a big wedding, just close friends and family. Sarah's sister flew in from Seattle. Daniel's friends from his support group came. The ceremony was held in the bookstore, surrounded by stories, surrounded by hope. Sarah wore a simple cream dress. No veil. Hair down. Daniel wore a navy suit. The hole in the collar finally mended. They wrote their own vows. Sarah went first. Daniel, you found me on the worst night of my life. And you didn't try to fix me. You didn't try to save me. You just stood beside me. You taught me that being broken isn't the end of the story. It's just the beginning of a new chapter. I promise to stand beside you, in joy and in sorrow, in fear and in courage, for all the chapters we have left to write. There wasn't a dry eye in that bookstore. Then it was Daniel's turn. Sarah, when my wife died, I thought my story was over. I thought I'd used up my one chance at happiness. But you taught me that love isn't finite. It's infinite. And honoring one love doesn't mean closing your heart to another. You brought light back into my life. You made me want to live again. Not just exist. Live. I promise to love you fiercely. To support your dreams. To hold your hand through every storm. And to never, ever take a single day with you for granted. The officiant pronounced them married. They kissed. Everyone cheered. And in that moment, surrounded by books and love and possibility, two broken people became whole. Time moves differently when you're happy. It flies and crawls all at once. A year after their wedding, Sarah and Daniel stood in the bookstore on Christmas Eve. They'd made it a tradition now, staying open late on Christmas Eve for anyone who needed a warm place to be. Around 7 o'clock, a young woman walked in, early 30s, business suit, carrying a box of personal belongings. Sarah recognized that look immediately. We're about to close, Daniel started to say. But Sarah touched his arm. Actually, she said gently, take your time. We're not in a rush. The young woman looked up. Her eyes were red from crying. Thank you, she whispered. Sarah walked over. Rough day. The woman laughed bitterly. Rough life. Just got laid off. Day before Christmas. 5 years at the company. Gone. Sarah nodded slowly. Let me get you some coffee. On the house. Daniel watched from across the store. Watched Sarah sit with this stranger. Talk to her quietly. Offer kindness without expectation. And he thought, this is why I love her. An hour later, as the young woman was leaving, she stopped at the door. Why were you so nice to me? Sarah smiled. Because 2 years ago, someone was nice to me when I needed it most. And it changed everything. The woman's eyes filled with tears. Will things get better? I don't know, Sarah said honestly. But I know they can. if you let them." The woman nodded, wiped her eyes. "Thank you." And she walked out into the night. Daniel came over and wrapped his arms around Sarah from behind. "You're amazing," he murmured. "I'm just passing it on." Passing what on? Hope. 3 months later, March, a letter arrived at the bookstore, addressed to Sarah. No return address. She opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten note. "Dear Sarah, you don't remember me, but I was in your bookstore on Christmas Eve. I just lost my job. Was thinking about giving up on everything. You gave me coffee. Talked to me. Told me things could get better. I didn't believe you, but I kept your business card. And when things got really dark, I looked at it, and I thought, if that woman could start over, maybe I can too. I'm writing to tell you that I got a new job. Better than the old one. And I'm okay. More than okay. Thank you for being kind to a stranger. You saved my life, and you didn't even know it. Paying it forward. J." Sarah read the letter 3 times. Then she showed it to Daniel. He read it, smiled through tears. "You know what this means?" he said. "What?" "Your story is becoming someone else's hope." Sarah looked around the bookstore, at the shelves full of stories, at the comfortable chairs where lonely people found community, at the windows where Christmas lights still twinkled even though it was March. This place, this beautiful, impossible place, had saved her. And now it was saving others. "We should do more," Sarah said suddenly. More outreach. More community programs. What if we partnered with job centers? Offered free coffee and conversation to people going through transitions? Daniel's eyes lit up. What if we created a fund to help people who can't afford books? Yes. What if we hosted support groups? And writing workshops for people finding their voices again? They stood there, finishing each other's sentences, building something bigger than themselves. And that's when Sarah realized, getting fired on Christmas Eve hadn't destroyed her life. It had started her life. 5 years passed. Second chapters expanded into the building next door. They added a cafe, a community center, a small theater for readings and performances. Sarah ran programs for people in transition, those who'd lost jobs, relationships, purpose. Daniel ran book drives and literacy programs. Together, they'd helped hundreds of people find their footing again. And on a cold evening in December, 7 years after that first Christmas Eve, Sarah stood on the bookstore roof, the same roof where Daniel had proposed. She was 49 now, gray streaks in her hair, laugh lines around her eyes. She looked happy, lived in. Daniel came up behind her, now 54, more gray than pepper in his hair. Still had that same gentle smile. "Thought I'd find you here," he said. Sarah leaned back against him, just thinking about how 7 years ago I thought my life was over. And now, Sarah turned to face him. "Now I can't imagine any other life. This life, our life, it's everything I never knew I wanted." Daniel kissed her forehead. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think you getting fired that day wasn't an ending. It was a beginning." "A beginning of what?" Daniel smiled. "Of you becoming who you were always meant to be." And standing there on that rooftop, looking out at the city that had witnessed their transformation, Sarah realized he was right. She wasn't the woman who'd been fired on Christmas Eve anymore. She was the woman who'd risen from those ashes, who'd found love, who'd found purpose, who'd found herself. And that was worth more than any job could ever be. 10 years after that Christmas Eve, Sarah stood in the bookstore, arranging a new display. She was 52. Daniel was 57. They'd been married 9 years. The bookstore had become a landmark. People came from all over the city to find hope there. The door chimed. Sarah looked up. A woman in her 60s walked in, well-dressed, confident, but her eyes were sad. "Can I help you?" Sarah asked. The woman hesitated. "I just needed somewhere to be. I retired last week, and I don't know what to do with myself." Sarah smiled. That smile that said, I understand. Let me get you some coffee, she said gently. And then maybe we can talk about second chapters. The woman's eyes filled with tears. Second chapters? Everyone deserves one, Sarah said. Trust me. I know. And as Sarah sat with this stranger, offering kindness and hope, she thought about that Christmas Eve 10 years ago, when she'd walked into this very bookstore, broken and lost, when a kind stranger had given her coffee and time and grace, when her life had ended and begun again. She'd been fired on Christmas Eve, lost everything, and found everything. Because sometimes the worst day of your life is really just the first page of your greatest story. You just have to be brave enough to turn the page. If you're going through something right now, if you feel lost or broken or like your story is over, remember Sarah. Remember that endings can be beginnings. Remember that sometimes you have to lose everything to find what really matters. Your second chapter is waiting. You just have to be brave enough to write it. Drop a comment if this story touched you. Share it with someone who needs hope. And remember, you are not alone. You never were. The end. Every story here carries a lesson, a warning, or a miracle. Subscribe. Your next breakthrough might be one story away.